Hello, students. We are learning English literature. Footprints Without Feet, chapter number 2, The Thief's Story. So, this story is about a young boy who's a thief. So, this boy starts living with Anil, who's a young man, and he plans on robbing Anil. But the problem is that Anil starts trusting him completely. So let us see if the thief is able to rob Anil. So let's read on to find out. I was still a thief when I met Anil. So when this thief met Anil, he was still a thief. And although only 15, so this thief was only 15 years old. I was an experienced and fairly successful hand. So even though he was only 15 years old, he was a pretty experienced thief and he had a successful hand at stealing. Anil was watching a wrestling match when I approached him. He was about 25, a tall, lean fellow. So Anil was watching a wrestling match when the young boy approached him. Anil was only 25 years old. He was a tall and lean fellow. Lean, thin, slim, and he looked easygoing. Easygoing means careless, kind, and simple enough for my purpose. So the purpose of the young boy was to rob Anil, and Anil seemed to be a perfectly good target for him. I hadn't had much luck of late. So much luck of late means recently he did not have any luck in stealing any money. So recently, in the past few days or in the past few months, he was not able to rob anybody of any money, and thought I might be able to get into the young man's confidence. So, because his luck was not with him in the last few days or last few months, so he decided to take the young man's confidence and then rob him. You look a bit of a wrestler yourself, I said. A little flattery helps in making friends. So, here flattery means मस्का लगाना या झूठी तारीफ करना. So the boy says that you look a bit of a wrestler yourself. So, and he says this because he thinks that a bit of flattery can help in making friends. So Anil replies, so do you. That means, oh, you too look like a wrestler. He replied, which put me off for a moment because at that time I was rather thin. So Anil's comment was not liked by this young boy because he was very thin and wrestlers are not very thin. Well, I said modestly. Modestly is honestly. I do wrestle a bit. So he said honestly that he does wrestles a bit. So we can imagine where he wrestles. So he might be wrestling the people while robbing them, or he might be wrestling the police while escaping them. This is what we can tell from the story. So Anil asks him, what's your name? And the boy replies, Hari Singh. I lied. That means this is a lie that his name is not Hari Singh. I took a new name every month. So he is one very smart thief. He changes his name every month. That kept me ahead of the police and my former employers. Former means earlier. Employers means boss, under whom we work. After this introduction, Anil talked about the well-oiled wrestlers who were grunting, making sound, lifting and throwing each other about. I didn't have much to say. Anil walked away. So after this short introduction, they started talking about the wrestlers, and Anil was basically talking, and this boy who says that his name is Hari Singh, he did not have much to say because he did not know much about wrestling. And when this little conversation was over, Anil walked away and I followed casually, carelessly. Hello again, he said. I gave him my most appealing smile. So, most appealing is most attractive. So, Hari Singh gave his most attractive smile and he said, I want to work for you. I said. but I can't pay you. So the boy Hari Singh says that he wants to walk for Anil, but Anil replies that he cannot pay him because perhaps he is not very rich himself, that he cannot spare money to pay him every month. I thought that over for a minute. So Hari Singh thinks about it for a minute. Perhaps means shayad. Perhaps I had misjudged my man. So perhaps he had made a mistake in finding a target for him. But still, I asked. That means the thief asked, "Can you feed me?" So the thief has a question for him, which is, "Can you feed me?" Anil replies, "Can you cook?" The thief says, "I can cook." I lied again. So this was another lie, which means he did not know cooking. So Anil said, "If you can cook, then maybe I can feed you." He took me to his room over the Jamna sweet shop and told me I could sleep on the balcony. But the meal I cooked that night must have been terrible because Anil gave it to a stray dog and told me to be off. So Anil asked Hari Singh to stay with him only on one condition, that he could cook. But he could not even do that properly because that was a lie. So the first time when Hari cooked food, the food was really terrible, the food was really bad because Anil gave it to a stray dog and then he told him to be off. To be off means to go away, not to stay with him anymore. But I just hung around. But the boy Hari, he did not go away, he just stayed back, smiling in my most appealing way. And he smiled his most attractive smile again, and he couldn't help laughing. So, looking at his most attractive smile, Anil could not stop himself from laughing, and he started laughing and he allowed him to stay with him. Later, he patted me on the head and said, "Never mind, he would teach me to cook." He also taught me to write my name and said he would soon teach me to write whole sentences and to add numbers. So, this young man Anil seems to be a very nice person. He says that he would teach Hari how to cook. He would also teach him how to write his name and how to write whole sentences and how to add numbers. So, in short, he is ready to educate the boy. I was grateful. Grateful is thankful. I knew that once I could write like an educated man, there would be no limit to what I could achieve. So, Hari knew that once he could write like an educated man, that means once he could become educated, he could do anything and he could achieve anything he wanted. It was quite pleasant working for Anil, and the boy even started enjoying his work, which he used to do for Anil. I made the tea in the morning and then would take my time buying the day's supplies, usually making a profit of about a rupee a day. So, every day the boy used to go and buy every day's supplies because they were not very rich, so they could not buy their supplies every month or every year, so they bought it every day. And when he went to buy the day supplies every day, he uh, cheated Anil and he made a profit of a rupee a day. Maybe there was some change which he did not give back to Anil and he kept it with himself, and that was the profit. I think he knew I made a little money this way, but he did not seem to mind. So the boy thinks that Anil already knew that he was doing this, but he did not seem to mind because he was an easygoing person, a careless person, as we have seen earlier. Anil made money by fits and starts. So fits and starts means very irregularly. So Anil earned very irregularly. He would borrow one week, lend the next. So his weeks were never like the one before. So one week he would be very short of money and he would ask money from others, and the other week when he uh, got money, he paid them back. He kept worrying about his next check, but as soon as it arrived, he would go out and celebrate. It seems he wrote for magazines, a queer way to make a living. So it seems that Anil wrote for the magazine, so he was a writer. And the boy thinks that it was a very queer way, it was a very strange way to make a living. One evening, he came home with a small bundle of notes saying he had just sold a book to a publisher. So, this was a great achievement for Anil because he had sold a book to a publisher and he got a small bundle of money which he brought home that night. At night, I saw him tuck the money under the mattress. Tuck means keep safely. So, at night, the boy saw where Anil kept his money. I had been working for Anil for almost a month, and apart from cheating on the shopping, I had not done anything in my line of work. So, was living, the boy was living with Anil for almost a month, and he had still not stolen any money apart from cheating on shopping, which was 1 rupee a day. I had every opportunity for doing so, even though he had got many chances to steal money, but yet he did not do so. Anil had given me a key to the door and could come and go as I pleased. He was the most trusting person I had ever met. So, Anil was a very trusting person, and it's very difficult to betray a person who trusts you completely, and that is why it was so difficult to rob him to steal money from him. It's easy to rob a greedy man because he can afford to be robbed, but it's difficult to rob a careless man. Now if a man is greedy, most probably greedy people are very rich. So if you rob a rich greedy man, he can afford it. It won't make much difference to him if he is robbed of some money. But it's difficult to rob a careless man like Anil. Sometimes he doesn't even notice he's been robbed. So sometimes the person who is careless, he doesn't even come to know that some money is stolen from him, and that takes all the pleasure out of the work. And to a thief, to a person who robs money, the person likes to watch the other person suffer. He likes to watch the expression of the person from whom he has stolen money. But if it's a careless man, he doesn't even notice that he is robbed. So that way, uh, the robber does not find any pleasure in his work. The robber does not enjoy his work if the person doesn't even notice. So, well, it's time I did some real work. I told myself, I'm out of practice. So now the boy, whose fake name was Hari Singh, he decides that now he should do some real work. Now he should make a plan of stealing money from Anil because he is out of practice. And if I don't take the money, he'll only waste it on his friends. After all, he doesn't even pay me. So the boy makes an excuse of robbing him, and the excuse is that he is not paying him. He's not giving him any money, even though he's cooking for him and he's doing his work. So, this is the excuse which he gives himself. Anil was asleep. A beam of moonlight stepped over the balcony and fell on the bed. So Anil was asleep, and it was a night which was bright with the moonlight, and a beam of moonlight fell on the bed as well. So the room was well lit. I sat up on the floor considering the situation. So this boy sat on the floor. He was considering the situation, if it was a good time to steal money or if it wasn't. If I took the money, I could catch the 10:30 express to Lucknow. So now he was planning what he could do after stealing the money. Slipping out of the blanket, I crept up to the bed. Anil was sleeping peacefully. His face was clear and unlined. So now there was some action. The boy slipped out of his blanket and he crept. Crept means walking on all the four limbs, on hands and legs. I crept up to the bed, and Anil was sleeping very peacefully and his face was clear and unlined. That means there were no wrinkles or no folds, no lines, no scars on his face. His face was very clear. Even I had more marks on my face. The mine were mostly scars. So this boy who's only 15 years old, he notices that somebody who's 25 years old has a very clear face, and somebody who's 15 years old, his face is covered with scars. So these scars might be a result of fights which he would have had with the people he robbed, or maybe with the police. My hand slid under the mattress, searching for the notes. When I found them, I drew them out without a sound. So now he's trying not to wake Anil and still steal the money. Anil sighed in his sleep and turned on his side towards me. So Anil turned in his sleep and now he was facing the boy. I was startled, shocked, and quickly crawled out of the room. So he was very shocked to see that Anil was facing towards him, and again he crawled. So crawled again to walk on all the four limbs. So he crawled out of the room. When I was on the road, I began to run. I had the notes at my waist, held there by the string of my pyjamas. I slowed down to a walk and counted the notes. 600 rupees in 50s. I could live like an old rich Arab for a week or two. So these things are happening after the boy has run out after stealing the money. So first he started running and he had the notes tied on his waist by the strings of his pajamas, and after running for a short distance he slowed down and he started walking, and then he counted the money. So he found that there were 600 rupees and they were notes of 50 rupees each. So he thought that he could live like a very rich person for a week or two. Oil rich Arab, that means we know that Arabian countries are famous for petroleum and diesel, and these oils are very costly. So he could live like somebody who is that rich. When I reached the station, I did not stop at the ticket office. I had never bought a ticket in my life. So he is a real thief, and thieves don't buy tickets. So he did not stop at the ticket office. He dashed straight to the platform, run very fast. The Lucknow Express was just moving out. The train had still to pick up speed, and I should have been able to jump into one of the carriages. So, when he came to the platform, he saw that the train on which he had to get on, it was moving out very slowly, and the train had still to pick up speed. That means the train was still slow, and it had not picked up speed yet. I should have been able to jump into one of the carriages. So with that speed, because the train was very slow, the boy, he should be able to jump into the carriages easily. But I hesitated. For some reason I can't explain, and I lost the chance to get away. But he still hesitated for some reason. He did not know what the reason was, and the train left the platform and he lost his chance to get away. When the train had gone, I found myself standing alone on the deserted platform. Deserted, empty, lonely. I had no idea where to spend the night. I had no friends, believing that friends were more trouble than help. So, because he was a thief, he did not waste time in making friends because he thought that friends were trouble. So, he had no friends and now he had no place to go, and I did not want to make anyone curious by staying at one of the small hotels near the station. And he also could not stay in the hotels near the railway station because then the people will become curious. The only person I knew really well was the man I had robbed. Leaving the station, I walked slowly through the bazaar. So the only man who he knew was the person he had robbed, was the person he had just cheated, and it was Anil. So he obviously could not go back. In my short career as a thief, I had made a study of men's faces when they had lost their goods. So after stealing money from people, he used to observe their faces. The greedy man showed fear. The rich man showed anger. The poor man showed acceptance. But I know that Anil's face when he discovered the theft would show only a touch of sadness. So he knew that when Anil would discover that this boy Hari has stolen his money, Anil would be sad. Not for the loss of money, but for the loss of trust, because he trusted the boy completely. I found myself in the Maidan and sat down on a bench. The night was chilly. It was early November, so it was winter and the night was cold. And a light drizzle added to my discomfort. Drizzle is very light rain. Soon it was raining quite heavily. My shirt and pajamas stuck to my skin, and a cold wind blew the rain across my face. So the weather started changing slowly. First, it was just a drizzle, then it started raining heavily, and his clothes started sticking to his body, and the wind which blew, that was also very cold. I went back to the bazaar and sat down at the shelter of the clock tower. The clock showed midnight, so it was 12 o'clock. I felt for the notes. So he started looking for his notes. They were damp from the rain. Damp, wet. Anil's money. In the morning, he would probably have given me 2 or 3 rupees to go to the cinema, but now I had it all. So here, this boy is thinking what might have happened tomorrow in the morning if he was still with Anil. So Anil would have given him 2 or 3 rupees to go watch a movie, but now he had all the money. I couldn't cook his meals, run to the bazaar, or learn to write whole sentences anymore. So now he starts thinking that because he has finally gotten away from Anil's house, there were certain things which he could not do. He could not cook his meals, he could not go to the bazaar, or he could not write whole sentences. He could not learn to write anymore. I had forgotten about them in the excitement of the theft. So he had forgotten about these things which he would not be able to do anymore because he was very excited to steal the money. Whole sentences I knew could one day bring me more than just 100 rupees. So he knew that if he started writing whole sentences, if he became an educated person, he could earn more than a few hundred rupees which he had now and which was wet. It was a simple matter to steal and sometimes just as simple to be caught. But to be a really big man, a clever and respected man was something else. So now the boy thinks that stealing is a simple matter, to get caught is also a simple matter. But to be an educated man, to be a respected man, this is something big. So now he decides that he will go back to Anil. So I should go back to Anil, I told myself, if only to learn to read and write. So now he has this realization that uh, his life can change only if he becomes an educated person, and he will be able to read and write and become educated only if he stays with Anil. I hurried back to the room feeling very nervous, for it is much easier to steal something than to return it undetected. So, when we steal something from somebody, it's very easy, but when we want to put it back again without anybody looking at it is difficult. I opened the door quietly, then stood in the doorway in clouded moonlight. Anil was still asleep. So, till now, things were good. Anil was still sleeping. I crept to the head of the bed and my hand came up with the notes. So, he came near the bed and he took those notes, that money in his hand. I felt his breath on my hand. I remained still for a minute. Then my hand found the edge of the mattress and slipped under it with the notes. So now the boy was able to keep the notes back under the mattress and then he slept. I woke up late next morning to find that Anil had already made the tea. So he woke up next day, and because he was late, it was his work to make tea. But because he woke up late, Anil had already made the tea. He stretched out his hand towards me. There was a 50 rupee note between his fingers. My heart sank. I thought I had been discovered. So, mm, Anil came towards him and he had a 50 rupee note in his hand. So here the boy was very disappointed because he thought that Anil has come to know that he was trying to rob him. I made some money yesterday, he explained. Now you'll be paid regularly. But it was something else indeed. Anil said that he made some money yesterday and now he will pay the boy regularly. My spirits rose. So now, when the boy came to know that Anil was not talking about the stealing but he was going to pay him regularly, so he became happy again. But when I took the note, I saw it was still wet from the night's rain. But when he took the 50 rupee note which Anil was giving him, the boy touched it and he came to know, he felt that the note was still wet from yesterday's rain. Today we'll start writing sentences, he said. So after giving the money to the boy, Anil said that from today they would start writing sentences. He knew, but neither his lips nor his eyes showed anything. So now the boy thinks that Anil knew that he tried to steal money from him, but he did not speak about it and he did not show it even from his eyes. I smiled at Anil in my most appealing way. So again, the boy smiled at Anil in his most attractive way, and the smile came by itself without any effort. And this time, the smile was natural, unlike the earlier times.